Hey people, what's going on? Just checking in to do a little bit more live streaming. I did my live workshop Drawing Essentials Part 3 yesterday, and this drawing right now is where we got to during the workshop. So it was about like a 3-hour workshop, maybe 3.5 actually, because we even like went overtime. And I still like have a lot of drawing to do, so I thought I'd kind of log in and answer some questions. So if you got questions, please just put them in the comments. And if you're interested in the whole Drawing Essentials series, parts 1, 2, and 3, you can definitely find those on my Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video. And also, if you want to like navigate them or whatever, you can go to stephenbaumanartwork.com. But otherwise, I'm just going to be here like drawing this and answering your questions and chatting with you guys and girls about this. Also, feel free, by the way, to like draw along. There's a reference on the screen and it's in 4K, so feel free, right? Yeah, so I'm just gonna get going. I know that some of you will be here actually from the stream. I know MJ is here for every piece of content that I put out, so I know he'll have been there during the workshop. But like I said, I'm just dialing in like a little bit casual today and getting some drawing done. By the way, please, somebody in the comments on YouTube, just let me know that the audio is doing fine so that I know it's doing fine so that I can like relax and just kind of get into what I'm thinking about here. Otherwise, it's going to be like in the back of my head the whole time. You know, is the audio working? Is everything going as it should? I think it is, but we'll see. So like I said, this is kind of about 3 hours worth of drawing. So yeah, because I did also in the beginning of the workshop, I did like about an hour-long lecture about also all of the concepts that we were going to be working with, and you know, all the stuff that kind of needed to be said before we even kind of got out of the blocks. So right, so the audio is working fantastic. No questions yet. As soon as you get a question, as soon as anything comes to mind that you want to talk about, just kind of punch that in. And like I said, I'll get to it with as much clarity and precision as I possibly can. as I'm trying to do, by the way, with my drawing here as well. There were a couple of things like at the end of the stream. Oh, actually, all right, forget about what I was saying. There's a really cool question came in from... oh man, I don't know how to pronounce this screen name, but Mr. Cecil, who says, do you own artwork from any other artists? Yes, I totally do. It was absolutely, you know, kind of a passion of mine when I was a student to like collect as many other artists' work as possible. So I've got works from everyone from like Ramiro Sanchez to Rachel Personet to Perilov, Nilsson Ricklund, and who else? Janne Jaskalainen. Like a lot of the people that I studied with, or were colleagues of mine and students of mine, have a lot of collections. Or sorry, a lot of like pencil drawings from students like Stephanie Kuhlberg and Britta Nuresten and Matilda Bjurström. Matilda's drawings, by the way, if you don't, she's not too active on social, but she is one of the better drafts people that I've ever come across in any of my days teaching, of which there were quite a few at the academy, but she was an absolute savant in terms of, you know, her ability to kind of grasp design. Whew, wow. 2D and 3D as well. Really, really amazing work. MJ Artwork is asking what games do I play, if any. That's a cool question. I mean, I grew up in a relatively digital age. So even when I was a kid, you know, I had like a PC at the house. Like actually, my father built one. It was back like you would order these kits for. Wow, I'm like showing my age a little bit. But back in the 80s, my dad like ordered this like computer kit. Where you would like basically put together a computer in your own home, and so like that, it was like an early like green screen computer. But quite rapidly, of course, technology progressed and personal computers progressed. And so naturally, with that, being a kid, you wanted to play video games. Nobody out there will remember this. I promise you, nobody will remember this. And I know MJ1 was way too young for it. There was once upon a time on like really, really old PCs in the 80s, a game called Scorched Earth that I used to play. I'm sure out there somewhere you can find like a screen grab from Scorched Earth, but that was a game that I once upon a time played. Now, when the pandemic hit, I was living in Jersey City in the States, and this is like right across the river from New York, like from Manhattan. So like we're in like, kind of real deep kind of urban territory. So like tons of, I mean, like my building had like 360 units in it. So we were just like, my wife and I just stayed in our apartment. Like we didn't even go in the hallways except to like take out the bins and like collect the groceries that we ordered. So in any event, I decided, around March 15th of like 2020. It's like, well, if I'm gonna get stuck in here, like all my recreation is gonna be in here, I'm just gonna buy an Xbox. So I bought an Xbox, and I really only play one game on it, and it's FIFA. And in fact, like I bought FIFA 20, or FIFA like 2020 or whatever, and I haven't updated it. So when I play it now, I still just play FIFA 20. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm a really really big soccer fan or football fan if you're living in Europe. And yeah, like years ago, a couple friends of mine in Gothenburg introduced me to FC Barcelona and Lionel Messi, and at the time it was with Alexis Sanchez and I think Pedro were playing up front. But it was it was a really great time, a really beautiful team, and so yeah, kind of fell in love with the beautiful game. So that's what I'm into. Sorry, I like really went long on that answer, and like I'm sure you guys all want to talk about drawing. Gentian Quelli is asking, do you sometimes go to Florence again? Well, yeah, I've been back since I left we moved away from Florence in 2010. And since then, I've been back on a couple different occasions, and it's fantastic. I mean, I was actually just talking the other day. My wife and I were at breakfast. We were like having coffee and chatting, and I was just saying, like, it'd be criminal if I don't get back, or if we don't get back to Florence. I mean, it's just such a museum city, and also it's like we kind of. I mean, I was 24 when I went there, but I would say that I did a tremendous amount of maturing while I was in Florence. It was kind of the city I feel like I kind of came of age in. So for me, like, it's also like a very significant, a very special place because of that. And so naturally, yeah, I'll absolutely go back there. Not to teach or anything, but just to travel and just to be in that city and kind of run by the old haunts. And yeah, I mean, every restaurant in Florence is a reason to go back. Like you can't set foot in a bad restaurant in Florence. It just doesn't occur. I mean, unless you're in like the absolute tourist epicenter. I bet there's probably a pretty meh place available there, but otherwise they're all categorically wonderful. Yeah, so anyway, I definitely have and definitely will, for sure. Anshu Verma is asking, would you prefer traditional art or digital art? Well, I think here's the thing about digital art that is cool, and I'll mention what I like about each one. Digital art, because it is so iterative, it is so fast, it really facilitates storytelling and kind of world creating. And I think there's just some fascinating aesthetics out there right now in digital painting. And people out there that, because it's so iterative, because it's so fast, are really sorting out composition. I wish by the way, I had like the account names in my head. I don't actually, I can't think of the ones that I follow, but I follow a lot of digital painting accounts on IG and on Instagram. And if you actually, you know what, if you probably go to my IG account and look at the people I'm following, you'll find in there like a lot of digital painters that I think are like good follows. And part of it is like they work so, they're so prolific, that they go through dozens and dozens and dozens of compositions, whereas like a traditional painter, like myself, like even painting quite quickly, you're gonna get, I don't know, you're gonna get like a painting every couple days. I mean, I'm not like an alla prima guy necessarily. I mean, I suppose that if you really push the limits of alla prima, you could get a well thought out composition like once a day. But these guys, like I know a good friend of mine works in Stockholm for a game design company. On a slow day, he's doing like 3 paintings. So I have to sip my tea. Hang on. So I think that's just like the really kind of cool thing about it, is that they're able to go so in depth on composition. And because of that, I think like also, rendering in digital painting is not necessarily like the end game, like it is in traditional work. I think at the moment, maybe a lot of traditional painters are still quite, what's the word? Quite taken by the fact that they can render something. I'm just as guilty of this as anybody. Like I just paint and draw portraits, that's just what I do. So I'm not saying, like, I'm not speaking about this from some plateau of greatness or anything, but I don't think we've had to necessarily invest so much in composition, at least like composition writ large. I mean, you compose a portrait, right? You compose a drawing like this even. But we're talking like, big scenic views. I think that there's painters out there that have done that are doing that. Like Mark D'Alessio, I think, is really, really at the forefront of, kind of composing his plein air paintings. I think his compositions are some of the most succinct that you're going to find out there, at least that I'm aware of. There's a lot of also like Russian artist accounts, like traditional artist accounts that I follow, that I think also are out there kind of, I think they have a really probably developed composition program in the schools where they're studying, which I didn't have. Like there wasn't really a composition, like, and I'm talking with a capital C here, right? Like a composition course that was taught when I studied. So, I mean, it was always kind of around the edges of things, but not really. It wasn't really fully fleshed out. So it's not something that I feel like I'm like necessarily that strong in. So I kind of really admire that in others, I think. What was the question? So do I prefer digital or traditional? I think probably, like I understand traditional better, and so I'm a better appreciator of it. It's like, with wine tasting or something. Maybe that's actually not a good metaphor, because if you're a wine connoisseur, then wine is wine. But I just like, I know so much better like what's going on in traditional painting, and so I think I'm much better equipped to appreciate it. Although I really do love and admire a lot of what really great digital painters are out there doing. For me, I'm somebody who, it's not necessarily always just the medium that captures my imagination. It's I think it's like the expressive language that an artist is using that really gets me excited about an artwork. So it could be oil painting, it could be digital painting. There's this, oh man, all right, so there's one account on Instagram right now that I'm like, just my eyes pop out for, and it's at Black Gold Sun. I actually contacted, I believe it's a woman that runs the account whose artwork it is, if I remember correctly. And I contacted her actually like asking, where do you like sell prints of your work? Because like I think the stuff that she's doing is just so like evocative and amazing and like modern and fantastic. And also, there's another artist, Tomer Hanuka. Uh, he's at Tropical Toxic on Instagram. He's really amazing as well. And I particularly like, there was work that he was doing a few years ago when I first got into his artwork that just like just melted my eyes. So he's really great as well. Let's see. Victor Pieri is asking a two-word question. He says, Charles Weed, question mark. Um, yeah, Charles was definitely like a painting hero of mine when I was a student, and eventually I was lucky enough to get to know him and his wife at the time, Louise Fenn, who both like were, when I first started at the academy, it was like total hero worship, like I really loved their work. And like I said, I was lucky enough to kind of meet them and visit them in Denmark, where they were living at the time. And yeah, just really like awesome, cool people. And yeah, I love his work. He's great. Really, really great guy. Really great character as well, Charles. So Paul Contreras Pina is asking, what kind of mediums would you like to explore? Which ones are the most challenging or the most forgiving? Well, forgiving is a matter of how well you know it, I think, so I find probably graphite is the one where I can most recover from a screw up. So like I have the least likelihood of abandoning projects in graphite because I always know I can take a left turn whenever I need to. Probably like one of the least forgiving mediums that I've worked in is gouache. I mean, I would get so meticulous in my gouache work, just because it's like you either that or nothing. I mean, or at least the way that I work. And I know there's artists out there that have like a much more expressive hand with gouache, and they kind of really let the brushstrokes flow and that. For me, like with the results that I'm trying to get, it's a little bit different, and so I find it a little bit less forgiving for that fact. In terms of like mediums I'd like to explore, the time will come when I use actual traditional egg tempera. Kind of played around a little bit with Sennelier's pre-tubed version, but I don't think it actually behaves like I've read that egg tempera behaves. And so since sorry Sennelier, but I don't necessarily like have a lot of faith in that product, I'll be searching out eventually the proper kind of traditional version of it. Just mixing it myself, which really isn't that hard. Let's see. Stain Oldenhoff says, do you have any tips on drawing from life? I suck at it, but if I draw from pictures, I feel that it's better than when I draw from life. Well, drawing from life is tricky because it engages a lot more your visual memory. So, when you look back and forth at a drawing, it's really kind of, or sorry, drawing. When you look back and forth at a photo, it's really the same every time. When you look back and forth at a model, it's different every time. I mean, there's even, you'll be in the model room working from, for instance, I did a lot of work with a nude for many, many years. And, the model's up there breathing. Like, that's happening, and so you have to, like, adapt to that. You have to kind of chase after that, and it's a whole vibe. It's just like with like landscape painting. I feel like it's a whole vibe. Like you got to go out there and you got to like be out there in it and figure out how the light behaves outdoors if you're going to be a landscape painter. I think it's very challenging, very difficult to create that without having been in that. I feel a little bit the same about life drawing. So you should try and strengthen your visual memory through exercises. If you just Google like memory shapes, there's plenty of articles and like exercises out there that you can access for free. Do some of those, and that will help you start to kind of engage with that part of your mind that is meant to be kind of memorizing what you're seeing. Nell Mondoy is saying, do you ever get the urge Sorry, everybody on Instagram. I was got a phone call from someone in Scotland, apparently. I don't know who that was. But yeah, like, so I'm simulcasting this on Instagram, just in case anybody wants to know what that is. And if you are watching on IG, come over to YouTube. The water's fine. The screen's in 4K, so you can just find my channel at Stephen Bauman Artwork on YouTube. But the question I was answering was, yeah, do you ever get the urge to grab a spray paint can and go back to your street graffiti roots? Less and less over the years. It's not that I don't have an affection for street art and graffiti. It's I think really it's just a matter of like practicality. You know, when I was just an artist, which is to say, like nowadays, right? I run a website. That's my job, and it's been very good to me, and I feel like I'm pretty good at doing it. But back when I was just an artist, meaning all I did was make paintings and drawings, and obviously I taught workshops and taught at the Florence Academy and things, but you know, primarily I was just in my studio painting. I feel like I had like a lot more time to wonder about things like that. Whereas nowadays, you know, I have to take my time like very seriously. And so things like that usually don't make it over the threshold of capturing my attention for long enough for me to pursue them. If that's the brutally honest version of it, is that I'm a little bit too busy to do things that are purely for nostalgic purposes. So hopefully that doesn't sound too like sad, but that's the truth. Okay, a lot of questions rolling in. MJ says, thoughts on design? Yes, I have many. I mean, you know, in terms of design, I think that it is cool that increasingly as I get older and I get more experienced in what I'm doing, you see that like good design, as I see it, like things that I evaluate as good, things that correlate to my views on design, it crosses so many genres. You know, there's great design in furniture, there's great design in frame making, you know, and like the same kind of principles exist there, you know, harmony, balance, you know, not having too many accents, you know, the aesthetic, you know, evoking a particular kind of mood that's coherent, you know, all these things, they translate. And the more that you kind of just get into that language, the more you start seeing it kind of sprout up everywhere. You know, a lot of the things that I'm passionate about, you know, you could find in architecture. You know, that sense of balance and structure and symmetry, and like great design kind of has a way of feeling quite grand, even if it's very humble. You know, it's one of the things that I feel about portraiture. You know, on the surface, on the surface, it's like a very limited art form. You know, it's easy to say that, oh, like it's just a head. But like I know that I've been to museums and been like stopped in my tracks by just a head, you know. So to me, I think that there's more in it. There's as much in it as you want to invest in there being in it, if that kind of makes sense. So Hawkran is asking, are rotary ink and mechanical pencils worth it? I want to say yes. I really do want to say yes because I own a couple of rotary pencils, the Rapid Pro 2.0s, and I used to have some of the rotary. I had a 0.5 millimeter mechanical pencil rotary. Here's the deal about rotary is they fall into that category of being really, really heavy, like extravagantly heavy. And I'm guessing here, but I feel like it's probably one of those like price tag issues where they're like, well, if we're gonna like charge X amount for their pencils, in which they're quite expensive, I guess they want them to like feel quite substantial, so that John and Jane consumer feel like they're getting their kind of money's worth in terms of material. But I think that they're in a way, I hate to say this, in a way they're stationary pencils. They're pencils for people that want to write letters and things with them, and that's its whole own cool market, and I have nothing against that. But as like a draftsman, like as a person making drawings, I think that I want different things out of my implement. If you love heavy pencils, then yeah, they're worth it. They have an incredibly luxurious feel. The design on them is really great, really beautiful. So many things to like about it, but for me, eventually, the reason I'm using these Koh-i-Noor lead holders instead of rotary is just that. It's just weight. Just they're so heavy. So that's ultimately my verdict. So a couple of people were, well, there's one more question here. Anshul Verma is asking, can you tell me as an artist what is the main source of income for an artist? Well, I guess that question reveals in itself a part of the difficulty, which is that you kind of have to create the income source for yourself. I can say that there are very few artists out there that I know personally, like of the many, 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 many artists that I know personally, and I've been doing this, essentially as a career since probably 2001. I mean, even though my career at that time was it's marginal at best, it was still like what I did for a living. Very few artists that I met in that time have their sole income being derived from selling their artwork. So a lot of people get into a lot of different kind of jobs and things that they do either with their art or on the side of their art to kind of make a living. So I can't really answer what the primary income is, but I can say that you should embrace the idea that you need to get creative about how to kind of market your work. Another advice that I've been kind of batting around in my head a little bit that maybe I'll give some voice to here is that I know a lot of artists are kind of waiting for somebody else or some other entity to like take them to the promised land, kind of, like they're going to get the right gallery and a good living is going to shower down on them, from that one relationship. For me, I was never comfortable with that because you're always in that situation. You're always waiting on somebody else to make it happen. You don't necessarily. You're not like taking control of the situation yourself. And so if things aren't working out, it can be very frustrating because you feel like you don't have any sense of agency, right? You don't have any way to change it. Whereas even if you have a very humble income as an artist and you're doing it yourself, it's all yours. Like, number one, you're not paying that enormous commission that galleries charge. But also, like, the client list, right? Like, all the paintings that I sold probably before 2000 and maybe 16. Even after that, 2017, 18. I don't actually know any of those people because they were sold like through galleries, and so galleries kept the email list and the contact info, and I don't get that. So when you do it yourself, like the equity is also yours, and so I would say, don't be afraid to like kind of take your career, take control of it yourself, you know, because the reality is, like other businesses, and I can say this, like having worked for schools, having worked with galleries, they're out there for themselves, not necessarily for you. So it's highly unlikely that you're going to secure your living. It's like anything, like working for somebody else. It's a very challenging way to get ahead. I hope that's not too dispiriting. The encouraging thing is you can do it yourself. You've got social media out there, and it's never too early to start kind of building an audience and kind of finding out what your take on connecting with the world is. MJ and Marco are mentioning old video games like Zelda and Oregon Trail. Yes, I am of the age group for whom Oregon Trail was a real thing. The computers at my elementary school had Oregon Trail on them, and I used to play that during computer lab classes. So I'm with you guys there. Gention Quelli is saying, when toning the paper with ink, do you have to add water too, or just spread it raw? If you want it to go on really smoothly, in general, you should probably like kind of pre-wet the paper a bit. So usually I would use a spray bottle and kind of spray that over the surface a couple times, and either with my hand or a brush, like go over the surface like several times to kind of spread the paper and get it nice and saturated. And then after that, you know, when you actually brush on the ink, it's going to spread a lot more evenly. So you can do either one. If you like a little bit more like the visual texture of the brush, you know, putting the ink on, of which there doesn't have to be a lot, honestly. If you're saturating the paper nice and good with that ink wash. But if you want it a little bit smoother, pre-wetting the paper is, I think, a very good idea. Jan Reyes asking, do I have the habit of exercise in your daily life? Absolutely, you know, and part of it is, well, I've been kind of, I would say, athletic maybe my whole life, in the sense that when I was young, when I was younger, I was really into skateboarding, and I would say probably I still kind of am. I was always street skating. I mean, if I had the opportunity nowadays, I would probably. I used to go to a skate park still when I lived in Sweden. You know, in the mid 2010s, I would still go skating like regularly. But here in Norway, I've not really exercised that opportunity at all. But nowadays, I've kind of taken up jogging, which is partly just a, you know, keep the wolf at the door kind of situation, like where I know that I'm of an age, like I'm 40 now, where if I don't exercise, you know, my muscles will atrophy, and which is just totally natural to occur. So I just try to keep myself in fitness nowadays. When I was younger, it was much more fun because you're doing stuff like skateboarding is a blast, you know. Jogging, I kind of maybe just make peace with. I wouldn't say that I have a passion for jogging necessarily. So yeah, for sure, and I think it's great for, you know, kind of clearing your head as an artist. You know, it's I think I had this notion, and it's probably healthy, like when you're younger, but this notion that like kind of art was just enough. Like that's just whenever I had time, like that's what I was doing. It wasn't like exercising. I mean, I guess I would skateboard and stuff, but I wouldn't think about, you know, what's all the other stuff I have to do to kind of keep myself in balance. But it's the typical mistake, I think, that you make when you're young, where you just kind of feed off the passion, when in fact, probably for your success, routine might have taken you a little bit further. But that's just my own personal observation about it. Let's see. Ansh Jane is saying, I struggle with outlines. Could you please give me some tips? Outlines is all about organization and evenness of value, right? You know, it's interesting eventually to have some variety in the character of the outlines that you're making. So some light and some heavy. But you also want to make sure that you're like in control of when and where that lightness or heaviness occurs. And so it's logical then to start out by gaining control over what kind of pressure you're able to put on the tip of your pencil. This is commonly understood to be what is called having like a light hand, right? But what it really is about is having a measured hand. So having control over how dark you make your marks on the paper. And that involves a lot of things. Holding your pencil further back, balancing your hand on the paper when you draw. These are the things that eventually lead you to having a little bit more greater kind of sense of control over the, sorry, I needed to make a measurement. A greater sense of control over the pressure that you're putting. It's all about the pressure on the tip of the pencil and your ability to kind of control that. And that's practice. That's just practice. Practicing the right way. Holding your pencil further back, balancing your hand on the paper. Let's see, Prashant Gupta says, do you have some times when you are not confident with your own artwork? Yeah, sure. I think, you know, I was actually pondering this just the other day. And I was thinking, well, you know, we always consider that there's confidence and insecurity, right? Those are like the two phases that we understand commonly, that we can experience as artists and art students. But I feel like I have kind of stumbled on a third type. And it is that I don't think that I've gotten like immune to insecurity. I've just at a certain point realized it is such a counterproductive reaction. And I've been through it for so long that I just kind of, I just don't pay as much attention to it now. You know, like I was doing, like I said, this is from a live stream workshop I was doing yesterday, Drawing Essentials Part 3. And I was getting some comments. Someone was saying, "Oh, the eye is too high. The eye is too high." And of course, like you go like, "Oh, wow, yeah, I totally missed that." So you get like, "Oh man, you know, I'm so bad at like drawing live. I should have seen that." But really, like, who cares? You know, like everybody gets stuff wrong. I'm not going to be the only artist out there that got something wrong. So you just kind of fix it and move on and try not to maybe pay so much attention. You know, and it sounds, I guess it sounds like a massive simplification that, oh, well, just don't pay attention to it. I don't think it's so much just that, but it's more how much can you like really afford to pay attention to it. I don't have the time to be so insecure anymore. That sounds very funny to say. I don't think I've said that out loud, but yeah, like I'm kind of too busy and I have too many commitments to be very bothered about my insecurity. And I'm sure if I had the time, it would be a big part of my feelings in general. So sorry, more questions coming in. There's a lot of, you know what? I'm going to try and get like faster at answering some of the questions because I feel like there's so many of them, and I kind of get bogged down a little bit. Sarah K is asking, what do you like to work with, pencil or charcoal, and why? I think I prefer graphite in general just because it kind of holds onto the paper a little bit more easily. Charcoal is a little bit more easier to damage, like when you're shipping it. So, I don't sell like a lot of work in Norway because I don't market my work in Norway. It's always online, and so I've got to ship it like halfway around the world most of the time. So graphite in that sense is a little bit, is in general a little bit safer. You can do it with charcoal, but graphite's just a little bit safer. And I don't know, I just started to prefer graphite. I didn't analyze it too much. I just kind of like it. Diana Hamway is asking, do you have a sort of checklist during the process of painting? It's a loose checklist of just concepts I need to hit and problems I need to solve. So yeah, and I've gotten like over the years more and more maybe methodical about how I go through a painting, and that has been very much to the benefit of my kind of success rate in terms of like paintings finished versus paintings abandoned. The question is, of course, can you manage to be both methodical like that and also keep your paintings a bit fresh? That is the challenge. Like anything, there's kind of two sides to it. Just being methodical on its own, it's not necessarily that hard. You just have to like really be disciplined and enforce that method on your work. But managing to keep it fresh and exciting for the viewer while being methodical, well, that's a different story. Right. Ansh Jane is saying, I'm 10 years old. My question is that am I too young to make realistic drawings? No, man. Better that you're younger. I think it's one of the tough things that realist artists of our generation kind of have a challenge with. If we're going to measure up to the great artists of history, like they started as children, So no, I think that probably you're in a great spot. Are you too young to maybe be proficient? Yeah, probably. It takes a long time to get good at this stuff, so just be patient with yourself, I think that artists in general, or people, artists today, maybe expect things to happen a little bit faster than they actually are capable of happening. This probably has a lot to do with Hollywood and the kind of vision that we have of artists nowadays. But like if you think about if you were a musician, you wouldn't expect to be good in a year. You'd expect that you really, really need to invest your time and your effort consistently over a long period of time to actually become really good at what you're doing. And that's the case for painting too. Ryan Abigan is saying, hey Stephen, I was considering joining your Patreon. I was wondering how should I go about consuming your content because there seems like a lot of content over there. You're not wrong. Yeah, it's about like kind of 180 hours at the last time I counted, which is probably a month ago. So, keep pushing that to probably 200 hours of content. In general, there is just now completed a primer on all the things that I consider essential to know to get into drawing. And it is unsurprisingly called Drawing Essentials, Part 1, 2, and 3. Just recorded Part 3 yesterday live with my Patreon subscribers. And so the unedited version of that is available with the edited versions of Parts 1 and 2. They are dense, they are packed with info, and the third one also has the possibility of you working along with it. So it's actually the beginning of kind of making this drawing as what we went through during that workshop. And eventually I'm going to post I think the finishing of that drawing, or at the very least the finishing of the up to an intermediate point, that drawing to go along with that lesson as well. So that's all there. That is the place that I would start, because that's going to give you the vocabulary and concepts that are going to be present in really every other thing that you find on that site. After that, I would say that there are some By the way, for all of you that are patrons, that are already subscribers, I know I messaged you about this when you subscribe, and there's a post on my page about this, but I also know that some people don't yet totally know it. StephenBaumanArtwork.com is a website that I made specifically to help you navigate my Patreon tutorials. Because the Patreon is like an old style blog scroll type of website, it's not very conducive to bringing out like a lot of organized content. So I needed to develop a totally different system for organizing it, which I did on a separate website, because of course Patreon's like kind of a proprietary platform and I can't really change anything about my Patreon page, but I can create, or I did create, a kind of navigation page. So go to StephenBaumanArtwork.com and you can find navigation links to all the tutorials on my page. It is the most crystal clear way to kind of get through all that stuff. On that page, there is actually a filter selection option at the top of the page where you can filter for beginner, intermediate, and advanced content. So if you're looking for where to start, starting with the beginner content is going to be a good way to kind of get yourself into that learning. In addition to that, which, believe it or not, there's more. Something that's coming up. I'm really excited about it. I've talked to a lot of my patrons about it. I've been planning this for a long time, trying to figure out how to make it work in the best possible way. But something that's going to come is the Atelier tier. Now, it's not going to cost anything more than your usual subscription. So if you are already a subscriber on Patreon, nothing about what you're paying changes. You're just going to get way more detailed content. The Atelier tier is going to be like a linear curriculum that's going to take you from start to finish of what you would go through in an academic year at a school like the ones that I taught at. There's going to be live interactive workshops that will be available also to watch later. And in addition to that, there will be, in a sense, group feedback sessions that are going to cover the lessons that you necessarily have to learn and the opportunities that you have to learn and the mistakes that you're going to make. All those are going to be covered in group critique videos that are also going to be made about each lesson. In addition to that, there will be detailed lesson notes with materials lists and basically a documentation of like what concepts are going to be present and that you need to extract from that project. So the Atelier tier is on the way sometime. Oh, I've been really good about not like promising any dates, but honestly, it's been in the works for quite a while, and probably in the next couple of months we're going to see that coming to fruition. So that is the long and short of that. Right, so next question. Philip Livthi is asking, what was your favorite skateboarding trick? Well, if we're talking like flat ground tricks, and probably this is we're going to come into something funny, because like skateboarding vernacular kind of changes a lot very rapidly. So like the way that I talk about skateboarding is probably 20 years old. So when I say it, hopefully it will ring relatively true to you. I don't know what generation you're in, but one of the tricks that I really liked was a front side 180 kickflip. So that means that you and the board turn your body like 180 degrees. So you're starting out like this, and you're turning. Sorry, actually, I'm regular footed, so my head is facing this direction. So I'd flip the board and my body that way. In the middle of that, there's also like a kick flip happening. So the board is twisting and turning 180 degrees, and then you're kind of going back off that way. So a front side 180 kickflip was one of my favorite tricks. There's the old standard that is the 360 flip. You can't go wrong with that. And in terms of like lip tricks or grinds and things, I would say that the 5-0 grind is probably the most proficient I became in terms of doing tricks on bars and rails and ledges and things. with the odd like front side nose slide put in. What I could never get was tail slides. It just wasn't a thing for me. I tried and I tried. I could never do it. I'm sure that's, by the way, all you hear like on an art channel, and I'm like yapping about skateboarding for 5 or 10 minutes. Let's see. Sarab Gurung asks, can you tell us how long do you take to complete a portrait in graphite? Usually between like 9 and 12 hours. You know, if there's a more complicated subject, it can take longer, but usually that's about what it takes for me. Let's see. Levi Goth says, good day, sir. What's your favorite time or your comfortable time to draw? Whenever I have time is my favorite time. Like today, you know, I had like the beginning of the month is usually a little bit slower for me than other days. So I was like, for sure, I'm drawing. And usually if I'm drawing, I feel, you know, like, oh, I should stream this as well. So I had some drawing time, and like all of my cameras are kind of set up here anyway. So if I'm drawing, I might as well be streaming. It's not like it's that like invasive or anything. So so that's why often when I have time to just draw for myself or just paint for myself, I'll stream it as well, because, you know, kind of why not? Let's see. The problem with it is, of course, that when I'm talking and drawing, I'm a little bit more mistake prone than when I'm just working myself. Because like when I'm working myself, I'll like stop, I'll pause, I'll like look back at this and like kind of look at it from different angles and things, and usually I'll kind of catch a lot more mistakes. But if I'm doing that like on camera, it just looks like this. Like that's the shot. It's just me staring blankly at my paper and kind of nothing happening here. So it's maybe not as great to watch. So like I said, it makes me just a little bit more error prone. So usually at the end of a live stream, I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. You need to like go back and kind of make these changes and things. But that's, you know, that's how the game is played. Let's see. Bartholo Klumpdink is saying hello from Sheffield. Hello, Bartholo. Chloride asks, hey, Stephen, thank you for your stream. I'm starting to ask myself, after looking more and more at artists, do you ever wish you push your art a little further? Yeah, all the time. Why not, you know? No, I mean, it's kind of a, you know, not the most exciting answer, but yeah, like every artist probably, you know, if you have some ambition, you think, yeah. And I mean, you know, I try to push myself as far as I can, but I think it's a natural feeling that you wish you could push it further, but you know, we're only capable of what we're capable of, so I kind of make peace with that. Akif Anwar is asking, if you don't mind, what type of camera do you use right now? It's you can actually see it over my shoulder here, but it's a Panasonic GH5, and I have in the studio overall, I have 4 of them for different shots and different projects. Try to keep at least one of them always kind of stationary here, so that I can just work whenever I have the time. And right now, like Cornelia and I were filming like a little bit of a bigger project, so the other cameras are going to be used for other stuff. But you know, so Panasonic GH5, that's the one. Med Mahogany is asking, you're progressive gradual in your values and shading. That is absolutely correct. Ooh, wait a minute. Somebody's got a pencil recommendation here. The Kaweco Special 2.0. Camilo Rodriguez. Camilo, if you could put that into the comments on the video, put like a link into that so I don't forget it. That would be awesome. And also for everybody else to kind of check out if they want to as well. Because I'm always on the lookout for a new pencil. There's never a time, I've never met a pencil I didn't want to buy at an online shop. So if you put in the link, chances are I'll be trying that out. Maybe I should do like a whole, you know, I've never done those like review videos. Like I know it's a big thing on Patreon, or not Patreon, but on YouTube, doing like review videos. Maybe I should do like a whole pencil review. And but like, are there enough pencils to do a pencil review? I would say yes. I mean, you could even split it up into lead pencils versus mechanical pencils. If you want to vote for a pencil review, just put that into the comments. I'll take an informal poll. And if you are so excited about that idea that you can manage to comment on this video about it, then I think I should definitely like put that on my to-do list. It is one thing that, by the way, like it would not at all be manufactured content in the sense that I can talk for ages just about pencil qualities and things, because I have spent like such a big part of my life using as many different types as I can possibly get a hold of. Right, let's see here. Ross, oh wait, Susan P. Faust is asking, where do you buy casts like this? If I don't already have it in the FAQs of my Patreon site, it's from a guy called Tor Larsen in Italy, and his IG account is Tor's Cast Collection, THOR. Good cast, good prices. Let's see. Ross Mason is saying, big fan of your work. Hypothetically, if I were to lose my hat in Gothenburg, how likely am I to get it back, and what is the correct process to do so? Well, if you lose your hat in Gothenburg, as I did once upon a time, and eventually told that story here on YouTube on a live stream, the typical practice, let's start with what happens if you find a hat. So if you are in Sweden, in the south of Sweden, or in Norway, what you'll do when you see like a hat or a glove or whatever on the side of the street, you're going to pick it up and you're going to put that on the nearest remotely eye level surface that you can find. Sometimes it's on a mailbox, sometimes it's on a little ledge that's on a wall that's next to the street, sometimes it's hanging it from the branch of a shrub. All of these are acceptable surfaces for you to deposit a hat or a glove or whatever wearable item that you find lost in the street. And that way, the person who's probably retracing their steps, looking for their precious lost glove, will be able to see it immediately. If you lost yours, I mean, the way to get it back, obviously, is to retrace your steps, to go over the places that you went to, and just try to see if any very helpful Scandinavian has propped that up on some eye-level surface for you to find. That's the story. So Rohan Daythanker is asking, what is the main difference between the education in today's ateliers versus the education in the École des Beaux-Arts in the 19th century? What are we missing out on nowadays? Probably we are missing out on, one, like the rigorousness, two, the length, and three, the thoroughness. The academies today are kind of suited, I think, to a little bit of what we think art training takes. But if you were to study at the École des Beaux-Arts, probably you had also been in art education for quite some time, if not apprenticeship before that. And you could also spend probably a more significant chunk of time at that school as well, learning pertinent skills. Of course, that's because at a certain point in time, the career of an artist was actually really quite an important one. When you're thinking like, 19th century, but is not this, but 18th, 17th century, you're thinking the camera is really barely in use. So where do you get pictures from? Well, you get them from artists. Like they were the ones that could like capture what was out there in the world and bring it into your drawing room, right? So it was a very important job, and so that dictated you could spend a lot more time in your education to become really, really proficient, because you probably stood to make a very good living once you got out. If you were really good at what you're doing, there's a lot of different applications for it as well. Obviously, you know, etching and reproductions were also things that were done, if not manually, at least, you know, there was some artist's hand inside of that. So, right, there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm definitely not going to get to them because actually my wife just got home, so I'm going to jump off the stream and hang out with her. And eventually I'm going to finish this kind of in my own time. But I just want to say thank you to everybody that was here for the stream, and definitely check out the next one. And if you're interested in learning about this stuff that I'm doing, Drawing Essentials Parts 1, 2, and 3 are now officially out on my Patreon page. You can go to stephenbaumanartwork.com or patreon.com/stephenbaumanartwork, and you can find all that stuff there. Thank you guys so much. And listen, I respect the questions, and I want to get to them next time. But now I'm going to go on the veranda and have a cup of tea in the sunshine like a good Scandinavian would do. Take care, everybody.